All right. Well, by my clock, it is 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time, and I am absolutely thrilled to be on board with you folks there on the beautiful West Coast, Santa Barbara area. Welcome, welcome one and all to Acing Your Online Interview presented by Career Team. My name is Charles Botts. I am the Director of Training and Communications at Career Team. I've been with the organization going on 6 years, and it is my absolute, actually, no, this month is my 6th year. This month is my anniversary, July 1. And so it is my absolute joy and pleasure to spend a little time with you this afternoon. Really grateful to the workforce board there in Santa Barbara for giving us the opportunity to bring forward some of the best practices that we have developed as an organization over the years, working with, assisting, and helping individuals just like y'all in navigating and succeeding through the career transition process. And what's interesting is even as we find ourselves in uncharted territory, in the midst of a global, a worldwide pandemic where we are in various stages of lockdown and quarantining and distancing, many of the rules, many of the best practices that held true prior to the novel coronavirus outbreak, the rampant spread of COVID-19, many of those same rules still apply, even in this new environment, even in this very strange time for all of us. Many of the rules that apply to being successful in and through a career transition still apply. And so we're excited to bring those forward, but to also take into account and consideration, there have been some significant changes, and no doubt. And so we're excited to present those. So before we jump in, I thought it would be valuable. I thought it might be helpful to provide a little bit of context, a little bit of framework, to offer some insight into who we are as an organization, as a company, who is Career Team, what do we do, and so we put together a little video that hopefully you'll enjoy, that will offer a little bit more insight into our organization.
Our students are lacking the key employment skills that they need to get a job.
I think we see a lot of individuals who, for a variety of reasons, are struggling to find their place in this economy.
Career Team came to the rescue. The program remains over 80% successful for people who are long-term unemployed. Career Team is extremely special because they satisfy specific need, especially when it comes to individuals who are living below margins.
I fell in a situation where I needed some assistance. They instilled something in me at a time that I needed it the most.
Career Team helps us to bridge that gap and provide that hands-on, direct service to those individuals to connect them with the skills that they need in order to be successful.
So it both provides training and support, but also it's a way of enabling the job seekers to really track their assets and bring those forward to employers.
Through the Career Edge platform, we've been able to touch 22,000 youth. Youth are able to create their own digital platform and search for jobs and find out what interests them.
So what I like about what Career Edge is doing is they're giving students a format to look at and say, okay, I just have to plug in, sort of a plug and play, and it's important for employers to see that.
We feel like it's very creative in its format. You get different options on how much you want to add, how much you want employers to see.
You can customize the whole process from start to finish.
Career Edge has given me the ability to post my jobs and find students on a more local level.
Go right to an application find the Department of Labor, connect with a career team.
By empowering students with their self-confidence and the information they need to not only get a job, but keep a job, that's a huge part of their success factors in life.
Okay. Let's get out of that. There we go. So yes, that is who we are. We are Career Team. We are a national service provider. We do contract management as well as kind of one-off training opportunities and programs, just like what we're doing here today. And so we are, again, we're thrilled, we're excited at the opportunity to join you and spend some time with you. So let's kind of jump into it and talk about how do we ace the online interview. 86%. Any guesses as to what this is referring to? You can throw your responses into the chat. If someone maybe wants to pull themselves off mute and offer their thought and go back on mute, or again, use the chat window. 86%, what does that number refer to, you think? Any guesses? No, we're a little shy today. 86%. Okay, here we go. So of interviews being held online during COVID. Very good, Dolores. I wonder if you looked up my citation there. Although pretty intuitive given the subject matter, but that's exactly right. According to Gartner, an HR firm that conducted a recent survey back in April, 86% of organizations reported that they are conducting no cheating. Understood. Reported that they are conducting 86% of their interviews, of their hiring interviews, via some sort of online web portal, some sort of online web device. 86%, that's a huge number. Team, what does that tell us? That tells us that more likely than not, your next interview is going to be held online. If you want to just throw a yes or an okay into the chat, if you have access to emojis, if you're participating via a mobile device, let me know how many folks on today have had an online interview during the coronavirus outbreak. How many folks have had the opportunity to participate in some sort of online or virtual interview for a job during the pandemic? And if you want to come off mute, that you could certainly just say, hey, me, I have, or throw a comment in the chat. Just curious if anyone has done that yet. Okay. All right, maybe not. Well, I think the key takeaway is if you haven't yet, just wait, right? Just wait. The opportunity is certainly on its way. So how do we succeed? How do we succeed in an environment where we need to prepare because we are going to have an online interview. The next interview that we have for a position for a full-time job is likely to be held online. Well, there's a couple things that we want to start with. So before we begin to tackle the nuance, the specific elements of an online interview, we have to keep something in mind. And what's that? It may be online, but you know what, guys? It's still an interview. It's still an interview. And so that's why I was saying earlier, some of those best practices, some of those areas that we have developed some expertise in over the years still apply, because even though it's online, even though it's through some sort of digitally connected to the internet device, it's still an interview. It's still a conversation between or more individuals about a particular opportunity. And so there are some basic things that we want to keep in mind. There are some basic things we want you to be aware of. I'm just going to go ahead and place folks on mute. No worries. Feel free to take yourself off if you do have a question or a comment. But there are some things we do want to keep in mind because ultimately it's still an interview. And so first and foremost, we have to remember, what's the purpose of the interview? What is an interview designed to do? Well, absolutely, it's designed to provide both parties with some new information, in particular, information from the employer's perspective that they weren't able to gather, to pick up on, to infer from your resume, from your cover letter, from any other materials that you may have provided. And from the career seeker's perspective, from the interviewee, it's an opportunity to learn more about the organization and the position beyond what was described in the job description, beyond what you might have uncovered via social media research, via internet research, visiting the company's website. So it's absolutely an opportunity to gain more information about both parties, both entities involved in the interview. That's number one. Number two, and maybe the most important, the purpose of the interview is to determine fit, to evaluate fit. Bottom line, team, bottom line, that's why we go through the exercise still of having a interhuman connection. Even if we're using technology to bridge the gap, it's still human to human. It's still person to person, or persons to person if it's a group interview or a panel interview format. But ultimately, the interview is designed to determine fit. Do you fit with the organization? And something really important I want us to remember, if you don't take away anything from today, hopefully you take away a couple things, but if you don't take away anything, remember that it's just as important for the organization to determine if you're a fit with them as it is for you to determine if the organization is a good fit for you. This evaluation goes both ways. It's not a one-sided conversation. If the organization is not a good fit for you, you need to feel empowered to walk away from that opportunity, because one of the worst mistakes we can make is to just take an opportunity because we need something and end up miserable and worse off than we were when we didn't have an opportunity. Now that needs to be evaluated on an individual basis. I'm certainly not going to tell anyone that is in a position where they need to support their families that they need to be walking away from an opportunity to do that. I respect absolutely the need to put food on the table, to make sure that the lights stay on, etc. So I am not here to advise anyone on what kinds of decisions they need to be making as it pertains to your individual life and circumstances. What I am here to tell you to do is that it's as important for you to determine whether or not the organization is a good fit for you. And ultimately, if you decide to go forward with an organization that you determine to not be a good fit, but the need outweighs the desire to be in a better situation, just know that going into it. Just be empowered and know going in that this is not a great situation, but it is an opportunity for me to provide for my family. So we want to keep a couple things in mind, kind of a little mental checklist, if you will. Some of this stuff I think is going to be rather intuitive, but I think it's important that we say it out loud, because even though it's an online interview, as we said earlier, it's still an interview. Research team, research. We have the ability to access social media profiles in addition to the company's website. Don't settle on just going to the organization's website to learn about the organization. Do that extra research, do that extra digging. This is why networking becomes so important. Allow me to put in a little plug, stand on my soapbox for a minute, talk about networking. Networking is so important because it is often getting access to inside information, getting access to an insider's perspective that can really make the difference. And so anytime you're applying for an opportunity, if you're able to connect with an individual that's already on the inside, already working with that organization, you're really just going to put yourself in that much better of a position. So research, research, research. Be early and wait patiently, and that absolutely applies even in an online situation. You want to be in the queue. You want to be there waiting for the interviewer, so when they log in, they see that you're already there online waiting to be let into the room. Remember names. You definitely want to do that, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the next item there, which is take notes. So as you're getting introduced to individuals, particularly if it's a group, if it's a panel situation, make sure you're jotting down some notes so that you can respond to the individual and respond to the individual by name. And so therefore, we also want to make sure that we're asking questions. Really important to walk into the interview with some prepared questions to ask. It demonstrates a level of interest. It demonstrates a level of engagement. And we don't want to miss the opportunity to learn more. You want to learn more about the organization and how it can align and fit with your values. Always want to yield the floor to the interviewer, give the interviewer an opportunity to start off the conversation. We want to be energetic. We want to be eager, but not so eager that we are jumping in front of people, cutting people off, and coming across as almost hyper aggressive. So always want to yield the floor to the interviewer. Give space, give an opportunity for the question to be asked in its entirety. Make sure that there isn't a second part or a second half to the question. Take into consideration that it is technology now. There may be delays. There may be pauses as the internet signal is keeping up with the platform that's being used. So you just want to give space, give some time, and absolutely, absolutely send a thank you note. Yes, even after an online, after a virtual interview, send that thank you note. Really important to do that. So what are the objectives? What are the 5 basic objectives of the interview? You want to create a favorable first impression. Knock them off their seat. Make them really think twice about needing to meet with anyone else because you have absolutely blown them out of the water. Get an idea, get a description of the ideal candidate. Tell me, what are the kinds of skills you're looking for someone to fill this role, to fill this opportunity? You want to get that description because as you are going through the course of the interview, the other thing that you're going to do is to begin to present yourself as that ideal candidate. You know, you'll say things like, well, earlier you had described this set of skills, and I just want to bring to your attention during my previous experience, during my previous opportunity, these are the ways that I demonstrated those skills. These are the things that I did that match up with what you're looking for someone in this particular role. So you want to identify what that ideal candidate looks like, and then you want to be able to describe and articulate how you meet that criteria. Overcome and neutralize objections. You know, well, we're looking for someone with a little bit more experience. Well, I got to tell you, while I may not have the 5 years of direct experience you're looking for in this particular area, I've got 3 years of direct experience. I've got another 6 years of related experience. And I bring a level of enthusiasm and excitement and eagerness to learn that you're just not going to find from many of the other candidates that you're interviewing with. You want to be able to overcome any objections that they may have, and ultimately you want to close the interview. You want to wrap up the interview by making sure that you are either securing a next interview, getting to that next round, or ideally walk away from the interview getting an offer, getting a job offer as you wrap up the interview. And so how do the objectives then lead to the 5 stages? So the 5 stages, the way the interview is going to play out is first you're going to build rapport. That's where that first impression comes in. So you're going to look for commonalities. A little bit trickier in an online situation. Usually if it's an in-person interview, there's a chance that you might end up actually meeting the interviewer in their office potentially. And so you may be able to pick up on and observe items and symbols around the office that you can use to connect with the individual, try to build rapport, identify some commonalities that way. A little bit trickier to do in an online interview where the view field is so limited. You're not getting exposed to a lot. And so, you know, a little bit trickier, but still really important to try to build that rapport. Think about, look for opportunities to identify commonalities. The next stage is to evaluate your track record. This is where the question and answer comes in, where the interviewer is going to ask you a series of questions. You're going to answer those questions. They're looking to establish your track record. The next stage are career goals. This is where you'll get to ask questions because you're talking about your future with the organization. So you're going to pose some questions around your goals, around where you hope to see yourself, and get a sense as to whether or not the organization kind of aligns with your vision and your values for your own future. The fourth stage is the company match. Is it a fit? Are you a fit with them? Are they a fit for you? And then that then brings you to the final place, the summary, where you're going to ask for the job. How do I do that, Charles? Very simply, when it comes to the end, if you've asked a series of questions, generally most interviews end with, well, do you have any final questions? Do you have any additional questions for me? This is a question that the interviewer poses to you, the interviewee. You want to respond with something along the lines of, well, I think that we've had a great conversation. I believe I've identified how I would be a strong fit for your organization. Here's the question. Is there any reason why? I want to make sure we all get this. Is there any reason why you would not be able to offer me this position today, this opportunity today? You want to end every interview with closing the interview. Well, we've got to evaluate other candidates. We've got additional rounds of interviewing. I understand that. I respect that. I feel very strongly about a match that we have here. And I would love to, at the very least, get your commitment to have another conversation. Do you see yourself offering me an opportunity to come back and continue to build our relationship and our connection? Absolutely. We can certainly recommend you for the next round of interviews. So that's how we want to close. We want to close, try to get that job if we can. Certainly want to make sure we position ourselves to be eligible for the next round of interviews. I just threw a lot. I realize I just threw a lot at you. But again, those are some of the basic components of the interview. I just received a note that my volume went down. Can folks still hear me okay? I didn't get any other feedback. So if you just want to throw a note in the chat, yes, it's okay, or no, it's still very low, please let me know. Very important that we are getting this information. Okay, so someone had to raise their volume to get to an okay point. All right, I will speak up. I'll do my best to speak up. So, you know, please, again, let me know if my volume starts to drop. I'm going to check my microphone really quick. Yep, my microphone is on the highest setting. So hopefully we've resolved that. But you please use the chat field. If at any point in time there's another issue, the closer I get, the better. No problem. Well, then we're going to make sure that we're right on top of it, and that way you can hear me clearly. Appreciate that feedback. So those are some fundamental pieces that we want to keep in mind. So now let's take the remainder of our time and review the 7 keys to acing your virtual interview, the 7 keys to acing your online or your virtual interview. So let's start with number 1. Don't want to take this for granted, something you may be aware of, but we want to make sure that our background is as simple, as clean, as plain as possible. I started to take a picture of my kitchen wall with, with kind of my laptop positioned right there. My family was not very excited about the current condition of our kitchen. And so didn't have an opportunity to show you a real world example, but you can see the illustration. I think we all, hopefully you understand the point. Somebody enjoyed that, laughed at that comment. Yeah. Don't want to get in trouble with the family. Don't want to do that. But we want to make sure that our background is plain. We want to make sure that our background is simple. It doesn't just have to be a solid wall. If you are in a position where maybe you have access to something like a virtual background where you could make it one solid color or something very nondescript, very simple, that's fine. If you don't have access to anything like this, even if it ends up being a bookshelf or if it's a kitty cornered section of the wall where kind of two pieces of the wall are coming together, that's fine. If you have to position yourself, and this is very important because we're talking about technology, we're going to talk about technology specifically here in step number 2. So step number 1 blends into step number 2. If you have to go elsewhere because maybe your residence doesn't have access to a particularly strong Wi-Fi signal, particularly strong internet signal, and so you need to go to a public library. You need to go to another institution where you can make use of a stronger, more dependable Wi-Fi signal. You want to make sure you do that. And even in that situation, what you would want to do is make sure that you have access to some headphones and that you can position yourself so that there is not a lot happening behind you. You certainly don't want to be in a situation where you're having to use a public facility and you have other individuals walking in and out of your view and that your background is plain and simple. And then so you want to make sure that you are checking, you're evaluating your technology. Do I have a strong Wi-Fi signal first and foremost? Can I connect using my devices, or if I'm borrowing someone's device, because maybe I don't want to use my phone, I'd rather use a tablet that has a larger display, or even a laptop that has a built-in web camera, or a laptop and a friend of mine has an additional camera, a separate web camera that they're going to let me use. Do I have a strong enough Wi-Fi signal to support the interview? And once I take care of that, do I then have the sufficient equipment as we just described? So if I'm going to use a cell phone, if that's what I have access to, and that's really the best that I can do, you want to get a stand. You want to make sure that you can prop it up. It's not advisable to hold, kind of in this situation, hold a cell phone the length of the interview. Your arm is going to get tired. You're going to end up having to shift from hand to hand, back and forth, and that's going to be very disruptive, both to yourself and to the interviewer. And so if you're going to use a cell phone or even a tablet, even though tablets are also lightweight, again, just holding something up for a period of time is going to exhaust you. And so you're going to want to make sure that you have some sort of stand that you configure, whether it's books or or what have you, some bottles, and you're doing kind of your Inspector Gadget thing. Whatever it is, you want to make sure that that device is propped up and it's stable. If you're using more of a mobile device, if you are using a laptop or a desktop with a separate webcam, or a laptop with a built-in camera, make sure that you're also checking, in addition to the camera, make sure you're checking the microphone. Make sure you're checking the microphone. We're going to address sound in just a minute, but that's all part of your technology check. That not only do you need to be seen, You need to be heard as well. Appreciate that feedback earlier, that it sounded like my volume had dropped. And so that's a perfect example. We don't want to be in a situation where we may be seen, but not heard. The interviewer is, while they are absolutely going to grade your appearance in terms of the impression that you make, they are going to be grading more so the content and the quality of your responses. And so as we think about our appearance, as we think about being seen, we got to take lighting into consideration. So we want to make sure that we have proper lighting, adequate lighting. You can see a very simple example here. Natural light is your friend. Natural light is absolutely your friend, particularly if you are not in a situation where you have the ability to have kind of a studio setup where you have lots of other lights to help get that brightness. Natural light is absolutely your friend where you can leverage it, recognizing can't do a whole lot about that if the interview is later in the day, maybe as the sun has gone down. But if you can leverage natural light, you want to make sure that you do that. And you want to make sure that the natural light is not positioned behind you, but it's actually in front of you. And so as you're thinking about and configuring your space, these are the things that you want to take into consideration, is make sure that as you are setting yourself up, particularly if you do have access to some nice big windows, whether again within your own residence, if you are using the residence of a friend, family member, relative, etc., or you're going to another facility and you're taking advantage of some big windows, do yourself a favor, make sure you are in front of the window and that the window is not behind you. You can see just in the difference on the screen, while we can certainly see the individual, it's my left, your right, the individual that is in front of the window, we can certainly see this individual, we can make out their face. There is a marked difference in the visibility and the quality of the image when we put ourselves with the window in front of us. We did get a comment in the chat that her a bookshelf is distracting where the window is behind her. That is a valid point as well. There is a lot of clutter there. It looks like there's a window, a box fan that's on the ground there as well. And so that, that is another example of cluttering up the background. Absolutely some more, some other folks have weighed in. And so the other view where the window is in front of her, not only do we get the nice lighting on her, but what it does something very powerful, is it puts the rest of the room in a bit of a shadow. And so while we might see that there are a couple things on her dresser, they're very difficult to see, and so we don't end up focusing on them. They do very much fade and blend into the background because all of the light is gathered on the individual's face, and the individual's very much the center of the image. And she's in focus. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Rosie, thank you for weighing in. Yes, in the second image, in the image where the light is shining on her face, where the window is in front of her, yes, she is absolutely in focus, much easier to see her that way. Great points, great feedback, everyone. Really appreciate that. Keep them coming, keep them coming. So we mentioned it earlier, talk about it again. Sound is really important. And so this is kind of a nondescript image, but we do get the window in front. So, we're reinforcing that idea. But what you can see over the individual's right shoulder, it is a speaker, microphone. It's gonna, a smart device that is giving that individual the ability to pick up their sound much more clearly. Many web cameras have microphones built into them. Newer laptops have microphones built into them. Certainly your mobile devices, particularly any smartphone, is going to have a microphone built in. You want to ensure that you have a functioning microphone. Lighting is great. Clean background, plain background is great. Being dressed professionally, we'll talk about next, is great. All those things are great. None of it matters if you cannot be heard. The interviewer will not sustain the interview if it's difficult to hear, if they have trouble hearing, if it's very low, if it's very garbled, if it's hard to understand. The interviewer will generally speaking not continue the interview in that situation. So we absolutely want to ensure that we have excellent sound quality, not just good sound quality. We want excellent sound quality. We want to be sure that we're coming across clear, we're coming across strong, that there are no challenges or issues. And we're getting some feedback that the individual in the screen needs to relax a little bit. There just may be a very focused moment for this individual, but good point, good observation. We certainly don't want to come across as tense. That's not going to serve us as well if we come across too tense, too wound up, too anxious. Great feedback. Great points there as well. So yeah, you want to make sure that you have access to a functioning microphone, even if it's built in. And many times you can test the microphone ahead of time. We'll address that in just a moment. But again, excellent sound, not just good sound, excellent sound. And so we want to dress professionally. I thought this image was kind of fun. I know that we've seen many jokes about it, and kind of the news anchor that's got the jacket and the shirt and the tie on, and then they've got jeans, or they've got basketball shorts or pajama bottoms on underneath, and that sort of thing. But ultimately, yeah, we want to make sure that we are professional. And I would even say you want to go the next level and be dressed appropriately and professionally, top to bottom. Absolutely. And so I will just very quickly, folks, you can see my slacks. I do have on slacks. That often comes up, particularly when you talk about being dressed professionally, kind of head to toe. I do have on my slacks. I did not come into today's session with shorts or pajama pants on the bottom. And so, I'm going to practice what I preach. And so I encourage you to do the same for a couple reasons. Number one, you certainly don't want to be in a position where anything can happen, strange things can happen. The device that you're using falls over, and so the rest of your outfit is exposed or lack thereof. But ultimately, and part of the reason why we encourage professional dress, and we use the term professional. This particular image, the individual is wearing a jacket and a tie. That's not always necessary. We absolutely recognize and acknowledge that organizations' cultures vary, which is why research is really important. Now, generally speaking, an organization that's doing an online interview is not necessarily going to take off points if someone is quote unquote overdressed. But do yourself the favor and make sure that you are dressed appropriately. Do that research, get a sense for the company's culture, and make sure that your attire is appropriate. I'm always going to err on the side of being more dressed. Ultimately, I am a big believer in dressing for where we want to go. And so maybe you don't necessarily see yourself in a suit and a tie, a blouse and a jacket, whether it's a suit designed for a male, suit designed for a female. Ultimately, you may see yourself in more of a creative field where that, that you never have to do that. You may see yourself, as an engineer. You may see yourself as a plant manager. And again, never having to wear that kind of attire. So absolutely recognize and acknowledge that dressing for where you want to go is going to vary individual to individual. The point remains the same. You want to be dressing for where you see yourself going, not just for the role, not just for the opportunity for which you're interviewing in the moment. You want to be dressing and positioning yourself, moving to a place where you are dressing for where you want to be, not just where you are. And so, again, I'm going to encourage you to go through the effort of pulling the entire ensemble together, pulling the entire outfit together, whatever it is, but going through the effort and putting yourself in a position where you are fully dressed as if you are going to meet with someone in person. Treat the online interview as much as an in-person interview as you can. You have to do some extra things. You have to take some additional steps. We've already covered a number of those. You're having to think about technology. You have to think about place. If you're going to interview in person, you never have to think about place because you're going to the place where you're going to be interviewed, even if you are being interviewed at a neutral location, at a restaurant, at a meeting facility, at another kind of public venue. The place has been selected for you when you're meeting in person. And so you have to think about place. You have to think about space and lighting and sound for an online interview. All these other components that you wouldn't normally when you are preparing for an in-person interview. But I want to remind us, I want to take us back to the very beginning of this presentation. An online interview is still an interview. And so you're going to do yourself a favor and prepare and dress for the online interview as if you were going to meet with someone in person. Put in the effort to go through the whole process. Some feedback, not necessarily approving of the individual's a haircut. I think that actually is the intentional style. But as you can see, I don't I don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to hairstyles. Mine is pretty consistent, pretty consistent. Not a lot of variation in my hairstyle. Not something I've had to pay a lot of attention to for many, many years. A great engagement, team. Great engagement. Really appreciate everyone's participation. Number 6, troubleshoot by practicing with someone else. Absolutely something that we could take for granted. And particularly if we wait, till kind of the night before, a couple hours before, can really jam ourselves up. You really want to give yourself a couple of days to practice and make sure that your technology is working. You may have to download a program. Your interviewer may send you a link for Zoom. You may not have Zoom on any of your devices or any of the devices that you're going to use. You may be using GoToMeeting. You may be using WebEx. You may be using Skype or FaceTime. And so you may have to download the program. And so you've got to make sure that the version or the device that you're using is compatible with the most recent version of the application of the software that is going to be hosting the interview. So we've got to take that into consideration. We've got to take into consideration not only the software, but our hardware. We've been talking about it throughout the entire presentation. I got to make sure that my camera works. I got to make sure that my microphone works. I have to make sure that I can be heard, that I can be seen. And so you really want to give yourself several days to work through all of these elements, all of these pieces, particularly if it's newer software. You want to give yourself an opportunity to get acclimated to the software. If it's something you've never used before, you certainly don't want the first time you interface with it to be the interview itself. Do not do yourself that disservice. Do yourself the favor of checking it out, maybe even watching a couple of a couple of instructional videos on how to get the most out of the tool so that you're comfortable navigating and utilizing every aspect and every feature. You don't need to be an expert. You absolutely don't need to be an expert. And many times the functionality that you're going to have access to as the interviewee, the individual being interviewed, is going to be significantly limited anyway. There's not a lot that you're likely going to be able to do as the person that's being interviewed. But if you have a sense, if you have some familiarity, and the interviewer is having trouble, you might be able to troubleshoot it with the interviewer in real time. What a great opportunity to prove your value, to prove how you can contribute to the organization by helping the interviewer overcome a challenge during the interview itself. A bit far-fetched, I understand, but you know what? Why not put yourself in a position to be able to do that if the opportunity arises, if it presents itself. And so also very important that the individual with whom you're practicing be somewhere else so you can test the internet signal strength. And so I'm going to recommend that you also practice around the time of day that your interview is scheduled for, particularly if you're going to do it at home. If you're depending on your home internet strength, you want to pay attention to what's happening. Is that a period in time where typically your signal gets a little weak, it gets a little unstable? I will disclose to all of you that I had a conversation with my family this morning that I needed everyone to come off of their devices for this, because I didn't want to run into a situation where my internet signal was unstable or slowed down because other devices were drawing the internet signal. And so you as much as you can take those things into account, you're going to help yourself. You're going to help yourself. And so again, you want to look for an opportunity to practice with someone that you can send somewhere else or that can be somewhere else so that you get a true feel for what it's like to connect and converse with someone that's not nearby, with someone that's not in earshot. Someone that is using a separate internet signal from the one that you're using in order to get a true feel for what it's like to connect with someone that is a distance away. And then finally, team, as we come to the 7th point, we absolutely want to remember personality matters most. If you are energetic, be energetic. And if you're someone that by default is not particularly very energetic, you want to get your energy up for an online interview, because you have to overcome some things. You have to overcome the fact that you're going to be somewhere apart from this individual. And needing to connect with that person means we have to put in a bit more effort. We can't rely on things like micro expressions. We can't rely on things like proximity and body language to help us communicate or reinforce. And in some instances we can, because we will likely see the face of the individual or individuals that we're interviewing with. And so we will have an opportunity to pick up on some of their body language. If they're nodding, if they're smiling, if they're leaning in a bit, some of those things will happen just without even thinking. They're just kind of unconscious, active listening skills that we utilize. And we want to make sure we're utilizing, right? We want to make sure when the interviewer is speaking, when they're asking a question or responding to one of our questions, we're doing all of those good things to communicate our active listening. We're leaning in, we're smiling, we're nodding, we're acknowledging, we're repeating back to the individual. All those things that we would do in person, we want to make sure that we really make a conscious effort to do that in person, online or through the virtual interface, to emphasize that connection. But also, team, and you will have noticed that I have been looking at my camera quite a bit, but I've also been looking off to the side, and you may have seen me looking over at the chat window, those sorts of things, you don't have to stare down your web camera. It's an interview, it's not a screen test. So it's okay to look off, especially if you're answering a question, you need a moment to think. You know what, that's a great question. This is how I would respond. So you notice I kind of looked up, so I wasn't trained on the camera the entire time. That's okay, that's okay. I think it's very important that we give ourselves the flexibility to acknowledge and recognize that you don't have to be so fixated on looking at the camera to make eye contact that we don't break that and look off, or get to the place where it's almost like a staring a situation. So let your personality come across. Yes, someone remarked into the comments that she absolutely does look happy to be there. This individual absolutely looks happy to be a part of the conversation. And so you have to do a little bit more. You have to give a little bit more as a part of a virtual interview, because you don't have the benefit of proximity. We have to make that extra effort. We got to take that extra step. We have to be a little bit more expressive, even if you're someone that generally by default is a little more shy. You're someone that's a little more quiet. You're a little more reserved. You're someone that's a little more introverted. Absolutely acknowledge that, recognize that, appreciate that, and that's okay. In the interview, we have to push ourselves to come out of that a bit, to make sure that we're really connecting with the interviewer. And so again, that's going to mean elevating our voice. That's going to mean leaning in a little bit more. That's going to mean being a little bit more expressive, because we have to overcome the natural barrier that's in place, because we are connecting via technology and not connecting in person. And so, yes, I think there was a comment into the chat. Yeah, charisma becomes very important. Charisma is something that we can learn. Charisma is something that we can practice, and charisma does become very important in an online virtual dialogue, virtual connection opportunity. Charisma is going to be a very valuable tool, a very valuable skill to help you overcome the built-in disadvantage of not being able to connect with a person directly in person because of the technology. And so with that, those are the 7 keys, team. Those are the 7 keys. If you're going to ace your online interview, you're going to take into account your background. We're going to make sure our background is clean, plain, simple, not distracting. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be empty, but we got some great feedback. We got some great comments throughout the presentation. We were noticing things. We were noticing what was happening in the background of some of the images that we were looking at. We want to take that into account. Our background should not be distracting, and lighting can help us. Lighting can help us with that. We want to make sure that our technology is adequate, that it's functioning well, that we have an operable camera, that we have an operable microphone, that we have a device that can access the platform well, that we're going to use for the interview. We want to make sure we have good lighting, that we're easy to see. And natural lighting is your friend. Natural lighting is going to be your best friend. And remember that as we're using natural lighting, we want the natural light to be positioned in front of us, not behind us. If it's behind us, it's going to cast shadows. When it's in front of us, it lights up our face. It allows the camera to focus in on our face, and the things that are in our background fade to the background, fade to the dark. And so the interviewer can focus on us specifically. We want to make sure that we've got great sound. Great sound. Actually, the word that I used was excellent. Excellent sound. I had an opportunity to live that out because at one point in time, it was a little bit difficult for y'all to hear me. And so we adjusted that. We made sure that we have excellent sound. Our attire has to be professional. We're addressing as if we were going for an in-person interview, top to bottom. Strongly recommend you put in the effort, you put in the work to make sure that you're dressed appropriately for the interview in your entirety, in your entire outfit selection. You want to make sure that you give yourself several days to practice and troubleshoot. Make sure that your connection is strong. Make sure your device functions well, utilizing the platform that's going to be hosting your interview. Make sure that the person that is working with you can hear you, can see you, can understand all of those things. Make sure you're comfortable with the interface. If it's Zoom, if it's GoToMeeting, if it's WebEx, if it's Skype, whatever it is, that you're comfortable utilizing it, and that you won't have any issues come game day, come showtime. And lastly, but absolutely not least, maybe most important, is that you are selling your marketing, your personality. Remember, this is all about you. The interview is all about you. Organizations do not take the investment. They don't invest the effort, the time, the resources to interview individuals where they don't have an interest. If you're getting an interview, it means the organization has an interest. Own that, celebrate that, recognize that, appreciate that, receive that. You're there for a reason. And so let your personality come across, be excited, be enthusiastic, be energetic. Let all of that come across, and really do it up, because you have to overcome this technology gap, this technology divide that is in place due to current circumstances. And so use this opportunity, really be expressive in order to convey your enthusiasm, your skills, your value, and your fit with the organization. Those are your 7 keys to acing the interview. We have a couple minutes left. I'd love to hear from you. It was a lot of information, but y'all were great responding in the chat, providing some great feedback and some commentary as we go along. But let's take the last couple minutes, and I'd love to respond to any questions folks may have. Okay, so we had a question earlier, regarding the 5 objectives. So the 5th objective is to close, to ask for the job, to get a job offer, to close the interview. And I'll page us back so that you can see it. To close, want to close the interview. Yes, this is absolutely, this is absolutely the key one. the key one. And appreciate your feedback. Any other questions? Any other questions? Folks miss anything else? Great. Okay. Well, listen, everyone, I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you. Appreciate your time and your attention, your contributions, your laughs. This was a great deal of fun for me. Hopefully it was beneficial, that it was worth your time, that you walked away with something, and that most importantly, what we've done today is positioned you to ace your next online interview, to walk away with that job offer. Thanks everyone for your time. Appreciate